Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachara Vam Yamuna Tira Vanachari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Grantharaj Shrimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vielen Dank. Entschuldige für die Verspätung. Ich vertrete Akila und gleichzeitig haben wir ein bisschen Frühstück gekocht. So Deutsch oder Englisch? Wer versteht kein Englisch? Who doesn't understand German? So, English. English. Wer kann übersetzen? Kannst du übersetzen? Okay, hier, kann ich dir die deutsche... Kann ich das deutsche Bhagavatam geben, Natalia? Kannst du es dir geben? Dankeschön. Okay, so we're reading from the Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, the status quo, with original Sanskrit text, Roman transliteration, synonyms, and elaborate purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jayamudhirayet. So we're reading from Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, Verse 7. Verse 7. Avadayangs Tadam Vyomnim Avadayam Stada Vyomnim Avadayam Stada Vyomnim Vaditrani Ghana Ghanaha Vaditrang Ghana Ghanaha Vaditrani Gananganaha Gayanti Tang Sma Gandharva Gayanti Tam Sma Gandharva Gayanti Tam Sma Gandharva Nrityanti Apsaraso Mudam Nityanti Apsaraso Mudam Nrityanti Apsaraso Mudam Avadayam Stadavyomni Vaditrani Ganaganaha Gayanti Tangsma Gandharvam Nrityanti Apsaraso Mudam Avadayang Stadavyomni Vaditrani Ganaganaham Gayanti Tangsma Gandharvam Nrityanti Apsaraso Mudam. So there are two words, Avadayangs. So when there's an M with a dot, it should be, if you want to pronounce it nicely, it's not normal M, it's like in French, bon, Avadayangs, and also tang, Avadayangs tam, Avadayangs tada. So please try. Avadayams tada vyomni Ganaganaha Gayanti Tamsma Gandharva Nityanti Apsaraso Mudam Vaditrani Ganaganaha Gayanti Tamsma Gandharva Yantyapsaraso Mudam Avadayam Stada Vyomni Mani Gana Ganaham Gayanti Tamsma Gandharva Mudam. Ladies, Matajis. Adayadayam Sada Vyomni Vaditrani Gana Ganaha Gayanti Tamsma Gandharva Nrityanti Apsaraso Mudam. Somebody else? Radayam Stada Vyomni Vaditrani Gana Ganaha Gayanti Tamsma Gandharva Nrityanti Apsaraso Muda. Somebody else wants to try? You want to try? Avadayam Stada Vyomni Vaditrani Gana Ganaha Gayanti tam smagandharva Nrityanti apsaraso muda. Thank you very much. I think it sounds very nice when Indians chant it. It sounds like it's like an extra natural flavor to the Sanskrit. Thank you. So word by word. Avadayan sounded. Tada at that time. Vyomni in the sky. Vaditrani musical instruments. Gana ganaha the rain clouds. Gayanti sang. Tam to him. Sma certainly. Gandharvaha the Gandharvas. Nrityanti danced. Apsarasaha the Apsaras. Muda in joyful ecstasy. So translation and purport, or later purport. At the time of his descent on earth, demigods in the form of rain clouds sounded musical instruments in the sky. The celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, sang the glories of the Lord, while celestial dancing girls, known as Apsaras, danced in joyful ecstasy. So I'll read text 8, so we have a purport. Petu sumana so divya ke charar apsara apavarjitaha praseduscha disha sarva ambhangsi cha manangsi cha. Translation and purport. At the time of the Lord's appearance, the demigods flying freely in the sky showered flowers. All the directions, all the waters, and everyone's mind became very satisfied. Purport. It is learned herewith that in the higher sky there are living entities who can travel through the air without being hampered. Although we can travel in outer space, we are hampered by so many impediments. But they are not. We learn from the pages of Shrimad Bhagavatam that the inhabitants of the planet called Siddhaloka can travel in space from one planet to another without impediment. They showered flowers on the earth when Lord Kapila, the son of Karama, appeared. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyanangyana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Prabhupada Priyarasaya Jagannatha Yatrananda Murtaye Bhakta Sukaya Krishnot-kirtanena Nrisinghena Rakshataya Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Sankarshana Karanatoyashai Garbhodashai Chapayobdishai Shashashchakala Sanityananda Kyarama Sharanam Mamastu Namo Mahavaranjaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gaura Tvise Namaha Namaste Halagraha Namaste Mushlayuda Namaste Revatikanta Namaste Bhaktavatsala Namaste Dharanidhara Namaste Balaram Shishta Pralambare Namaste Stue Himam Krishna Purvaja He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopipakanta Radhakanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pangor Mamamanda Matirgati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radhamadana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadru Mada Srimad Ratangara Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Deva Upreshtalivi Savyamana Usmarami Shrimandra Sarasaram Vivam Sivata Tatastitaha Karsham Veno Swanar Gopir Gopinata Shriyastunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishavano Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So again the verses. Avadayam stadavyomni vaditrani gana ganaha gayanti tam smagandharva nrityanti apsaraso mudham. I shall read the previous one as well, the English. After many, many years, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Madhusudana, the killer of the demon Madhu, having entered the semen of Kardama, appeared in Devahuti, just as fire comes from wood in a sacrifice. At the time of his descent on earth, demigods in the form of raining clouds sounded musical instruments in the sky. The celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, sang the glories of the Lord, while celestial dancing girls known as Apsaras danced in joyful ecstasy. At the time of the Lord's appearance, the demigods flying freely in the sky showered flowers. All the directions, all the waters, everyone's mind became very satisfied. So this is a very, maybe the key part, one of the key parts of the third canto, we could say, because now finally Kardama Muni has appeared. One of the remaining section of the Shrimad Bhagavatam, the second canto, will be about the teachings of Kapila Muni, Kapila Muni and Sankhya Yoga philosophy. And here now we hear how auspicious his appearance was and how it was perceived by the demigods. So one interesting thing that is written here, it says that the demigods in the form of serene clouds sounded musical instruments in the sky. So for many people, it's a very amazing, you say, natural phenomena when the sounds, sound. And it can be scary, and different cultures, they were very afraid actually when there was, too much thunder. Like the Germans, they used to think the sky will fall on their head, if it cracks too much, it will just the ceiling will fall on their head. And here we hear that this sounds in the clouds, that the demigods, as raining clouds, the sounds that they produced were for the specific occasion. And not only that, but because this could sound almost like an impersonal idea. Like maybe it was not really that the demigods were there, It was just the demigods in the form of the clouds. It was just the clouds making sounds, and the people thought it was the demigods. You could interpret it like that. But Prabhupada clearly then elaborates a little bit further, and also the remaining verses explain how the Gandharvas were, playing amazing instrument, and the Apsaras, the dancing girls of the heavenly planets, they were dancing joyfully in ecstasy. And the demigods were flying freely in the sky, and they were showering flowers in all directions, all the waters, everyone's mind became very satisfied. So we know that as long as Krishna was present on the planet, everything was extremely auspicious. And you could say maybe people or the planet only realized his presence in one sense when he left. Because when he left, then all kinds of auspicious situations and circumstances decreased. So we have this description in the Bhagavatam when Krishna leaves. In the first canto we have one description, how everything became very desolate, everything became very empty, and the luster of everything decreased, and like it says here, everyone's mind became very satisfied. So when the minds are satisfied, it it is, you can feel it. You can feel it. When everybody is satisfied, then you feel, it's, I'll say like this. The mind, the face is the index of the mind. So when the mind is glad, when the mind is happy, you can see it in the faces of the people. And if the mind is not satisfied, you can also see it in the faces of the people. So the face, it's said to be the index or the indicator of what is happening, in the mind. Some people might be very good at, pretending, or putting up masks. But generally, most people, it's relatively easy to see how they're feeling or how they're doing. If all the minds are satisfied, that means that everybody has happy faces. So if everybody has happy faces, that's very contagious, actually. I've experienced it a few times when you are in a very bad mood. I remember in the Brahmacharya ashram, when I was in the Brahmacharya, sometimes I really wanted to be in a bad mood because something really disturbed me. But everybody else was in a good mood. And I had tried really hard to be in a bad mood, but it didn't work. The happy minds, the happy faces around me, they kind of like uplifted me and overshadowed my determination to be in a bad mood. And also when I was a child, I had my best friend, Radhakund. Radhakund and myself, we always were together. And a few times I had, a bad mood, a bad day. I didn't want to go somewhere or I didn't want to do something. But he was so determined, to do something, nice, that every single time he always won. I couldn't get away with just, no, I'm staying home, I don't want to do anything today. So in a similar way, when the presence of Krishna is there and everyone's mind is satisfied, everybody is glad, then the entire atmosphere changes. Or you could also say, in a room full of people, sometimes, I don't know, if there is, a crisis or something terrible happened, you enter the room and you feel it, you're like, oh my God, So you're very, silent and quiet. But if you enter into the temple room and there's, roaring kirtan, everybody's dancing, then in a similar way you are taken away. So we can try to imagine how the circumstances were when Krishna was there. When Krishna was in the planet, everything was so auspicious and just beautiful and effulgent and happy, and we even hear the climate was more regulated. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. The rain came regularly. All kinds of things like that. And in the first canto of Shrimad Bhagavatam, we hear how Yudhishthira Maharaj is seeing all of this, strange symptoms, Everything is becoming weird, depressed, the temples are becoming desolate, even it says the deities in the temple were crying, and donkeys were screaming, Not nice sounds, And what else? Thunder was also heard, and all kind of inauspicious signs and symptoms, So he was wondering what might have happened, And one part of himself knew, probably Krishna left, But he didn't want to think about it. He didn't want to speak about it, So only when Arjuna returned, then Arjuna confirmed, yes, Krishna has left the planet. So, or there's another example of, this is another avatar of Vishnu, or a Shaktivesh avatar of Vishnu, Buddha. When Buddha was on the planet, there is a story quite in the beginning of his journey. Wherever he stepped, a lotus would grow, they say. So the touch of the lotus feet, this is often emphasized. The touch of the lotus feet of Krishna on the planet was like a soothing, cooling, spiritual energy. So when Krishna was touching the planet, like some people speculate, about cornfields, cornfield circles. There's these formations in the cornfields, and there's all kinds of speculation how they appear. Who knows them? These cornfields, you don't know? They're very common in Europe, in England, but also many other places. and there's like very symmetrical, formations in the cornfields. And some people speculate that it's the demigods doing acupuncture on the earth, It's like acupuncture, like treatment, They're putting these holy symbols, on the planet, and it's, it's healing the planet somehow, So it's some speculation, but what we know for sure is when Krishna, touches the planet, this is extremely auspicious, and Mother Earth is extremely glad and happy, and imagine you can carry Krishna, all the time. Krishna is touching you with her feet, with his feet. So yes, the appearance of the Lord is extremely auspicious, and it's also, of course, described in a very similar way when, in a very beautiful description, quite elaborate description, also in the 10th canto of the Shrimad Bhagavatam, when not Draupadi, Devaki. Devaki was pregnant with Krishna. Krishna was present in her womb, and then she became extremely beautiful. It says in general, when a woman becomes pregnant, you can see it in her face. She becomes more chubby, more beautiful. But when Krishna, is in somebody's womb, then her beauty became extremely visible, and all the circumstances, became more and more auspicious, and especially then when Krishna was born. It says that, I forget all the details, but I think it says that all the seasons appeared simultaneously, for example. So, so winter is nice because we have, nice, now it's not so nice anymore. Now it's rainy and ice, But yesterday it was still very nice. It was like winter wonderland, everything was glittering, like crystals and powder snow, but it was very, very cold, almost like everything was hurting, And the spring is, of course, nice because, flowers, so many flowers, a lot of blooms, And the fall is also very nice, when the here everything turns golden, And in Vrindavan, of course, in India in general, Kartik actually is, to some extent, something like spring because it becomes a little bit cooler. It's a very nice breeze. A lot of flowers also are blooming. Lotuses are blooming in Kartik time. When you go in Kartik to India, you can offer lotus flower garlands to Krishna. If you go in in January, February, for Gorpurnim time, there's not so many lotuses, almost no lotuses, But in the summertime, and especially in Kartik time, you can offer like full lotus garlands, to Krishna. So each season has a very unique quality. And actually, traditionally, the Vedas, and also, of course, in India, there are not 4, but 6 seasons. 6 seasons. I forgot what it was like. So spring, summer, monsoon, fall, winter, and what's the 6th? There's a 6th, but I forgot which one it is. Yeah, maybe you know? This is the problem, Yeah. I read a lecture, I read an article about it.
In Ayurveda we have an early summer and a late summer and an early autumn and a late autumn. So this is, and then you have the winter and the spring. Then you have 6.
Okay, something like that. But I read a very interesting lecture about this, because Prabhupada actually mentions it also a few times in his purports, but I forgot now. But this is one of the problems India has, is that India is still running, it's now running on like Western influenced education. So children in India, they learn in school there's 4 seasons, But in reality, they experience 6, So this is the discrepancy, between colonized education. So you're like 4 seasons, but actually there are 6, And now the grandmother might tell you, no, actually there are 6 seasons, But then we forget again because we get so influenced by the West. Singade Bhagwan ki jai. So yes, all the seasons manifested simultaneously. I think even it says all the best qualities of each season. Because one devotee once asked Srila Prabhupada, is there snow in the spiritual world? In the spiritual reality, in the transcendental, in Vaikuntha, in Krishna Loka, is there snow? And Prabhupada said, yes, but it's not cold. It's perfect, you know. We can have snow, but it's not cold, you know. That's perfect. So, like that, when Krishna appears, the material laws of nature, you could say, cease to be in control. Krishna supersedes, you know, or you could say Krishna's presence is more powerful than the laws of nature. So therefore, supersedes means that he is more powerful. You know? So when Krishna appears, he supersedes all the laws of nature, and that is even visible. You know, that all the seasons might, you know, take place at the same time. Also, all the auspicious planets, you know, it's like Krishna appeared, you know, so all the planets like rearranged, you know, in a very auspicious constellation. You know, difficult to imagine how it works. But yeah, Krishna certainly supersedes, you know, the material reality. And we know why also, because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that only with a small portion of my energy, I'm controlling this material energy. You know? So only a very small portion of Krishna is controlling this material reality. Or like some other devotees put it, Krishna is not God. You know? Krishna is not God. Krishna actually is Krishna, you know, in Vrindavan. And, you know, kind of like his side engagement, you know, is God. So this is a very interesting way to look at it. Because I was just reading, who was writing? I think Shiva and somebody was writing about it. When we say the word Krishna, what do you mean? You know, it's like sometimes maybe you're like, I don't know, in the kitchen or something, and you hit yourself. You know, you're like, oh, Krishna. You know, like oh my God. You know, or you're scared. You know, Krishna. You know, help. But whom do you mean? You know, whom do you mean with Krishna? What do you mean with Krishna? Because we can mean very often when we say the word Krishna, we just mean God in general. You know, Krishna. Krishna is everything, so we can always say Krishna. You know, Krishna. But actually there's a few differences, you know, about Krishna. You know? Krishna is not Krishna. There's a few different Krishnas. You know? Many different Krishnas. Generally we could say there are three main Krishnas, you could say, you know. So there's Krishna in Dwarka. You know? So Krishna in Dwarka Leela, everybody in Dwarka, it says, they know and they perceive Krishna as the super soul. You know? So they understand Krishna is the Paramatma. You know? He's the supreme soul. He's, you know, they know his mystical abilities. They're aware of his, you know, supernatural powers. You know, and they also very much rely on his protection. You know? Because Krishna in the Dwarka Leela, he's constantly protecting the city. You know, so it's very interesting because he's not technically the king of Dwarka, but he's certainly the most prominent, the most popular citizen of Dwarka. You know, you could say citizen of the year every year. You know, and he's of course the hero also. He's the main hero of the city, and he's always protecting the city against, especially Jarasandha. You know, Jarasandha? Yeah, no, Jarasandha. Yeah, Jarasandha. No, he's the one who attacked Krishna Dwarka so many times. Mathura. And Dwarka also. No, Dwarka, then Dwarka was already the protected city beyond Dwarka, beyond Mathura. So yes, Krishna is in Dwarka, Krishna is very royal. He's a warrior, he's a kshatriya, you know. He's a, you know, very amazing, you know, you could say, how do you say? You know, shining hero, you know, shining hero. You know? Beautiful armor, big weapons, chariots, you know, everything. So many palaces, you know, 16,108 palaces, you know. It's described. Krishna married 16,108 queens, and he manifested or constructed, had Vishvakarma construct for each one of them a palace. And not only that, he expanded himself into each palace. And then in the morning when he would go to the assembly hall, he would, you know, all the 16,108 Krishnas would emerge from the palaces, merge into one Krishna, and then he would join the assembly. And then he would come out again, and then again expand into 16,108 Krishnas and enter the palaces and do all kinds of different things in each palace. You know, one palace he was, you know, joking with his wife. Another palace he was playing chess. Another palace he was playing with his children, and so on and so forth. So very amazing opulence. So the opulence of Dwarka is, supersedes everything. And then Mathura is a little bit different, because Mathura is already very close to Vrindavan. So nowadays Mathura is 10 kilometers from Vrindavan. It's like Valkirchen. Valkirchen is Mathura, and Jandalsbrunn is Vrindavan. Something like that. So Mathura, even it's a city, it's said as Mathura has, because it's so close to Vrindavan, it has a lot of the sweetness, of Vrindavan. So the residents of Vrindavan sometimes, go to Mathura, like we hear, the residents of Vrindavan, they went to Mathura to bring all kinds of, kind of like taxes, they had to, give away some rice and some of their produce and ghee and yogurt to Kamsa, and also they came, with Krishna to the fight, So Krishna was invited to fight. So Mathura is actually a mixture. It says Mathura is a mixture. In Mathura, Krishna is not really, especially in the beginning, he's more, a young child, a relatively young child, and he is studying, and he's, because of the proximity of to Vrindavan, the mellow of Mathura is very different than Dwarka. Dwarka is very opulent and big, and his full opulence is manifested. In Mathura, Krishna is not yet fully manifested, his full opulence, but Mathura is the city. So in Mathura, it's actually a mixture, it says, of Aishwarya, of opulence and wealth, city life, and at the same time, sweetness. And there's a very nice description when Krishna and Balaram entered Mathura. When they entered Mathura, they, for them it was like, like a playground, like a big playground. And they, perform a few heroic tasks and kill this huge elephant, this raging elephant. But also some of the residents decorated them with flowers, And some of the residents of Mathura, for example, decorated Krishna and Balaram with sandalwood, chandan decorations. And the description is, because sometimes we hear not so much, but in many temples, the chandan which is offered to the deities, it's offered to Prabhupada, and then it's offered to the devotees afterwards, a little bit on the forehead, just with the flower. In India, it's very common. But you can also apply chandan in a very artistic way, So you have chandan, sandalwood paste mixed with different colors, and then you can use with sticks or brushes, and you can paint very nice patterns, with chandan. So there are some depictions of Krishna having very nice yellow, chandan, and then some, patterns on it. And the description in the Bhagavatam is that I forgot it was a lady or a man. You remember? Was it Kupja? It was Kupja, yeah. Kupja, true, Kupja. Kupja was the one who was hunchbacked. And then Krishna, straightened her up and made her beautiful again. And then she was so grateful, she decorated them, with chandan. And the description is that she decorated the entire body, every visible part of the body, with beautiful chandan patterns, So in Dwarka, that might not happen, Mathura is a little bit more, Krishna is just, kind of like a young city boy, and he's, everybody he's more accessible. In Dwarka, he's already much more, you could say, royal, important. And then, in one sense, you could say all of this is not really Krishna. It is Krishna, but actually, more technically, we would say it is Vasudev. Vasudev Krishna. We hear from the different acharyas that as soon as Krishna steps out of Vrindavan, the Braj Vrindavan, Braj Krishna, Nandalal Krishna, he becomes actually Vasudev. So, and it also is visible in some of the Dwarka Leelas of Krishna, where he fully manifests his form as Vasudev with, 4 arms, and he's, flying on Garuda. So in Vrindavan, Krishna would never fly on Garuda. Everybody would be very scared of Garuda, probably. This gigantic bird, and he likes to eat snakes. Garuda is the only devotee who is allowed a non-vegetarian diet. Prabhupada says sometimes. Generally devotees are vegetarian, the devotees of the Lord, but Garuda not. Garuda is not vegetarian. He likes to eat snakes, and it's an interesting story why he doesn't like snakes so much, and why he likes to eat snakes. But yes, so Garuda would not really fit, in Vrindavan Leela. So Vrindavan, and the point I'm trying to make ultimately is that Krishna in Vrindavan is really who he is. So in one sense you could say Krishna, that's who he really eternally is, Krishna, and everything else happening outside of Vrindavan is actually only an expansion and not really his main occupation. So the main occupation of Krishna is Akila Rasa Amrita Murti. He's actually, his occupation is to reciprocate fully. He has the capacity to fully reciprocate with all of his devotees. That's his main occupation. Within Krishna, the rasa, you could say, the nectar of fulfillment of any relationship is stored. He has the capacity to reciprocate and also, you could say, give full satisfaction to any desire we might have. You could say, in other words, only Krishna is actually able to really fulfill your desires in relationships, especially in anything ultimately, but especially in relationships. We seek in so many different relationships different forms of, protection or recognition or just enjoyment. But the reality is that material relationships will always be to some extent, compromised. And in the beginning, we might be very, elated, or very inspired, very attracted. But the nature of matter is that it tends to decrease. Attraction in matter tends to decrease. If there's no deeper bond, beyond especially, bodily appearance, it's very common. People, especially in modern times, it's normal, to change partners very frequently, because there's no deeper bond. So Krishna is the person who is really capable to fulfill and to reciprocate fully any desire we might have. So that's the word Akila. Akila means so many things. If you put Akila into the Sanskrit dictionary, you will get dozens and dozens and dozens of different words, but they all mean more or less the same. So Akila means complete, perfect, without limitation, and so on and so forth. So Akila Rasa. Rasa means taste, or flavor. Amrita. Amrita means without death, so eternal, or also nectarian. It is very relishable, but it's also without end. It's inexhaustible. Everything within matter is exhaustible. There is a point where you exhaust, a relationship or a flavor. If you eat too much of something, then the flavor decreases. If you eat too much something you really like, and you eat too much of it, then it becomes poison. You hate it. You can. When somebody is completely full, and you offer him, even more food, it's like, no, please, no. It's torture. So, Krishna is Amrita. Amrita means that whatever he supplies is always always beneficial, always nectarian, always attractive. It is never that you become actually saturated. And also it means that there is no point where you actually become bored or had enough of Krishna. And then Murti. Murti means person, or Murti means an expression of an emotion. So when we say also murti, murti means that, a sculptor has captured one expression, murtaye, an expression of Krishna. So that's the word murti. So, and there's a few different words for murti. Archa vigraha, murti. I heard this lecture recently. I forgot the other ones, but there's a few different words, and they all indicate different aspects, of deity worship. Not only one word for deity worship, but the key word is murtaye, murti. So murti means that we capture a specific moment, in Krishna's, avatars or, pastimes, So generally we depict Krishna playing the flute, but it might be Krishna, leaning on Balaram, So different, you could say, like snapshots, like a photo, of spiritual reality. That's murti, murtaye. So Krishna is the person who embodies, you could also say. He is embodying this ability to, completely reciprocate with any desire we have. And this is, you could say, really Krishna. So it's interesting because in the purpose of Srila Prabhupada would certainly use the word Krishna very often, very generally. Krishna as in generally the supreme God who could, we would say God, Krishna is the creator of the universe. Krishna is the one, giving us always protection and so on and so forth, which like the indirectly is always true because Krishna is the source of everything, but in some other texts, when you say the word Krishna, you really mean only Krishna in Vrindavan. So in any case, the appearance of, because we could also say, because even in this section of the Bhagavatam, sometimes Srila Prabhupada would refer to Kapila Muni as Krishna. Kapila Muni is also Krishna. But we would probably say Kapila Muni is an incarnation of Krishna. Then we know a little bit more exactly in what context Kapila is appearing. And Srila Prabhupada is talking also here about the demigods, the living entities who can travel through the air without being hampered. So this is a very interesting topic, because there's a few topics related to this, because it might seem that when you first hear it, I remember when some bhaktas who came in the very beginning, when they were in the temple, they're like, yeah, I like everything, but I'm not sure I believe that there are yogis who can fly. I'm not sure, I'm not sure yet if I believe that part. So that might be a little bit difficult to believe, that there are living entities. Very often yogis are described who can do that, like Narada Muni, for example, or here it says, all the residents of Siddha Loka, they have the Siddha means, of course, perfected beings who have, all 8 mystic abilities. So they can manipulate nature in a way that we cannot. And the way this Siddhas are described, there's 2 things. One thing is that we can, the Siddhas, at the beginning you could say, it begins all with sense control. Everything begins with sense control in any path of yoga. So the idea is if you are able to control your senses, then you are controlling also the mind. Technically you control the mind, and by the control of the mind you control the senses. It says that the senses are actually like duck babies, duck babies, and the mind is like the duck mama. So wherever the duck mama goes, the senses also follow. So of course, maybe you have very, you could say, badly educated ducklings, and then the mother has a hard time, to have her ducklings in line, So the senses are going in all directions, you're completely distracted, But in general, if you actually really focus your mind, the senses have to follow, Or you could also say like that, it's easier to control the mind, than to try to control each sense individually. You know, if you try to control each sense individually, you know, while you're controlling one child, the three other childs are running away. You know, so if you control the mind, then you can collect all of the senses. So by controlling the senses, by, you know, being internally directed, you know, you withdraw, like in the Bhagavad Gita it says, you know, a yogi is like a turtle, you know, who withdraws its limbs into its case, you know. So in a similar way, a yogi learns, in any path of yoga, we learn to withdraw our senses from the external reality and try to focus on internal reality. You know? So that's what we're doing every morning when we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You know? Japa, we just try to focus on the sounds, you know, of the Mahamantra. And Hare Krishna. Hare means the internal reality. Hare means Antaranga Shakti, you know? Sarupa Shakti. The internal world is Hare. You know? If we just chant this word very, very consciously, she, Radharani, will give us entrance, you know, into the realm of transcendence, into the realm of spiritual reality. So, by controlling the senses, you also control all the senses, all the elements related to the senses. Each sense is related to certain elements. You know, the eyes are related to the element of fire and light. The touch is related to the wind and air, and so on and so forth. So the elements and the senses are related. So it says somebody who is truly the master of his senses, he also becomes a master of the elements. You know, you can manipulate and control the elements, you know, if you learn the science. So mystic abilities are not siddhas, are not David Copperfield tricks, you know. It's not a trick, you know, that it looks like somebody's flying, or looks like, you know. Or maybe some people speculate, maybe he actually had some siddhas from his past life, you know. So he was able to really fly. But most of the, you know, modern day magicians, they have just very elaborate tricks, you know. And if you know how the trick works, then you can perform it. But actually there's still a similarity, because if you know the science, how it's done, then it's not so magical anymore, you know. It's like, you know, I know one magic trick, you know. I know how to put a coin through my neck and put it out of my mouth, you know. And it really looks like it, you know. And my two younger brothers, you know, for many years, they really thought I can do it, you know. Until one day I showed them how it's actually done, you know. So, like that, if you know the science, then it's not so, you know, amazing anymore in one sense. So in a similar way, if you know how, you know, and this is also Sankhya Yoga actually, you know, everything that Kapila Muni is going to describe now is this, you know, Sankhya Yoga, you know, understanding, systematically counting and analyzing and categorizing and, you know, developing a hierarchy of the elements and the relationship, you know, with the senses, the working senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, the relationship to the elements, and how everything is, you know, related into the mind, intelligence, false ego, how this, all of this, you know, is in interaction with the three modes of material nature, the three gunas. All of this is Sankhya Yoga. So if you really understand Sankhya Yoga and have a very clear idea of how this world actually works, then you can also control it, you know. You can manipulate, you know, and that's a siddhi, you know, that's a siddhi. When you know how to manipulate, how to control the elements. And then you do that by looking at different entities who already have those siddhis, you know, it says. So if you want to fly, you know, you can look at different, you know, living entities that can fly, you know. So there are different living entities who fly, you know, birds, insects, you know, and they have this ability. And, you know, other living entities, for example, many frogs, you know, and fish, you know, in the winter, they just, you know, dig themselves into the mud, you know, and then they lower their heartbeat, you know, very, 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 very low, very slow. I don't know exactly, depending on the on the species, but I don't know, maybe once a day, you know, one heartbeat, you know, something like that. So they use very little energy and they can survive the entire winter, you know, in a stiff situation. Like, I didn't know this, but recently I heard that some people who keep turtles, you know, some people have turtles as pets at home, you know, it's not a good idea, because for one turtle to arrive, you know, at the zoo shop, you know, I think 100 died on the way, you know, something like that. Horrible, you know. But anyway, many people keep turtles, and when they go on holiday, they just put the turtle in the freezer. You know, and then the turtle is, you know, and then when they come back, they unfreeze it, you know, and then it starts walking again. So, I don't know if they like it, but they can do it, you know, they can survive for, you know, very long periods of time without food, because they're like, they lower their heartbeat. So it says yogis observe nature and they learned how to imitate, you know, these behaviors, you know, because these animals are already, their organism and their, you know, I don't know, elemental composition, whatever, is made in such a way that they can perform those tasks. So yogis, you know, knowing how all the elements work, how the senses work, they imitate that, you know. And then they can fly, you know. Some yogis can, you know, bury themselves, you know, under the earth, you know, and survive many weeks, you know, buried, you know, like that, because they just imitate, you know, the different animals, it says. So yes, it is very much possible that it is believable if you understand how it's done. You know, if you understand a little bit more, I don't know how it's done in practicality, but in theory, I have understood a little bit, you know, of how it's explained, how they do it, you know. So it's not just some magic, but actually there is some logic also to how they are able to control matter and do things that might seem impossible for us now. Okay, I want to stop now. Maybe there are some questions, yes, corrections, anything? Mm-hmm.
You mentioned at the beginning, I don't know if intentionally, but Buddha as a Shaktavesha avatar.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mentioned in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, one of the avatars. Is he a Vishnu tattva or?
I think both. So as far as I understand, sometimes Prabhupada certainly says that Buddha is a Saktavish avatar. And of course we know also from the Bhagavatam that Buddha appears again and again. So it's not only one time. So I think where is it in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam where there's a description of Buddha who appeared in a different yuga, second, and where there was a big, you know, like in a different Kali Yuga, Buddha appeared and prevented a huge war, like with missiles, it even says, you know. So a war, like a missile war. Imagine there's like, you know, India and Pakistan, you know, want to go a nuclear war, you know, because Kashmir topic is getting too hot. So now they're going to fire all their nuclear rockets at each other, you know. Something like that, you know, situation where, you know, two opposing parties were about to, you know, destroy each other. And then Buddha appeared, you know, and, you know, preached the same thing, ahimsa, you know, non-violence, and managed to prevent this disaster, you know. So sometimes Buddha is a Shaktavish avatar, and sometimes he is Vishnu Tattva. That's how I understand it. And yeah, so the Buddha, the recent Buddha, I don't know, what do you say? Yeah.
And if you say, oh, in this list, there's
Buddha.
And the list is about Vishnu Tattva. No, it's not. If you look by the moons there.
Yeah, true. Mm.
So the avatar is the general.
Yeah. So these are general, yeah, that's a good point, yeah. So general list of all the avatars, and it might be Saktavish avatar, Leela avatars, you know, Dash avatars. So there's different avatars, Manvantara avatars.
You don't have written in Bhagavatam. As far as it comes from Rupa Goswami, it's like Bhagavatam, that he says, okay, Bhagavatam says avatar, but there are different kinds of avatars. All this comes from Rupa Goswami and Chaitanya. It's not so specific.
Yeah, in Bhagavatam also, when Narada Muni speaks sometimes, or when Shiva speaks, it also says Shri Bhagavan Vacha. So they're also seen as incarnations or direct representatives of Krishna, of God. Okay. Any other questions, topics? Against
so you spoke about these different areas of Krishna Lila. There's a different expansions of Krishna, as well as Krishna as example. So it's interesting that we have different realities where Krishna is in different forms in the center. And it's not just Krishna and Vaikuntha, because we know there are many Vaikuntha lords, but there are also different lords in Krishna's Lila. So do you know something about different Vrindavans? Because I heard something, there are different Vrindavans actually.
Yeah. I mean, Rupa Goswami already talks about it. He says, he makes the hierarchy already. Even within Vrindavan, he says Radhakund is the highest. So, but I wouldn't know much more detail than that. But of course, we know that there's Krishna in Radhakund. It says in the noon. How's it called? The Surya, or when Krishna goes to the Surya temple. So there's a few specific pastimes that are considered to be the most confidential. When he meets Radha, or also the Govardhan pastimes where Krishna meets Radharani in Govardhan are considered to be the topmost. But then there's also Krishna who's playing with his friends, with the cowherd boys, and then there's Krishna who is, the child, and is, pampered by the elderly residents of Vrindavan. So maybe related to the rasas, there's different Krishnas within the different rasas he's, showing within Vrindavan. But about locations, also it says that Radhakund is amongst the locations in Vrindavan, in Braj, the highest.
Different Vrindavans in general, not that there's just an area inside Vrindavan, but there's like different Vrindavans. For example, there's an inner and an outer Vrindavan. And in inner Vrindavan, there's Parakiras and outer is Swakiras. Because you have mentioned that Krishna's married with Radharani.
Yeah. Jiva Goswami says, and also like these modern depictions of Krishna Lila in Indian TV, then there is a wedding also, Radha Krishna get married. Yeah.
So there is actually really there.
That's interesting. So beyond Chaitanya Lila and Krishna Lila, there's also within Vrindavan, you could say an external reality and a more confidential reality. But generally, the way Prabhupada presents Vrindavan, we focus directly on you could say the internal part actually. We don't hear too much about this external form of Vrindavan or outer layer of Vrindavan. Yes, Sanjay.
You spoke about Krishna as Akhilam Rasamrita Murti and how Krishna is the essential, Krishna has to be there in all kinds of exchanges with other persons also. And maybe you can give some practical advice how to improve that quality of always seeing Krishna, or always perceiving Krishna, and always relating to Krishna in all exchanges with all people.
I think because I always try to explain it like this, that Krishna is Bhagavan. We can say Krishna is Bhagavan. It means he's full of opulences, 6 opulences. He's the wealthiest, the strongest, the most popular, the most. And when we have this foundational appreciation for Krishna as Bhagavan, then even more, you could say, intimate or nice to appreciate is how he is Akhila Rasamrita Murti. So he's Bhagavan, he's all powerful, he's all this, you could say, amazing position, amazing opulences. But Akhila Rasamrita Murti really emphasizes that he is the person with whom you can have a relationship, and this relationship will be fulfilling. So it's, this, I think Akhila Rasamrita Murti emphasizes that Krishna is a person with whom you can have a relationship. It's not just Bhagavan whom you worship, whom you respect and whom you venerate, and maybe you're afraid, but Akhila Rasamrita Murti really means that Krishna is, your personal friend, your personal, anything, any relationship. Like the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to teach. What is it? Krishna Mata, Krishna Pita, Krishna Dana Pran, something like this. There's one part missing. But Krishna is your mother, Krishna is your father, Krishna is your friend, Krishna is your everything, Krishna is your life air, you know. So, yeah, for me, and a practical example is, I don't know, maybe this is a little bit of, maybe this is something actually a little bit more internal, because externally we might be doing all kinds of different services, you know, to just, you know, fulfill our duties, but we should internally think that we are, you know, we are developing a relationship with Krishna, and Krishna is really, you know, is reciprocating, has the ability to reciprocate fully, you know, any endeavor we do to connect with him, to serve him, to please him, to remember him, you know. So, yeah, for me the practical part about Akila Rasamrita Murti is that it really is, it inspires me to realize that Krishna is able and is personified and willing to, you know, reciprocate any approach that we make, and he has the full capacity to do that, to reciprocate. Yeah? Because we very soon notice that we only have a certain, you know, ability, you know, like how many WhatsApp and Telegram messages you can answer a day, you know. It's like, oh God, you know. You know, like how many children you want to have? I'm not sure, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, maybe 6. Then the older brothers will take care of the younger brothers, you know. But, you know, we have a certain limit, you know. But Krishna has no limit, you know. He had with each queen 10 children, you know. So that's, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of children, you know. You know, 100,000s of children, and then each one of those child had also 10 children, you know. So he had relationship with this, you know, all of these children and grandchildren, you know, and he could do it. You know? So he has this ability. Yeah. It's okay? Mehr fällt mir nicht ein. Okay. It's already 9, so we have nice Weihnachtsbreakfast, Frühstück heute. German Brezel. Grantaraj Shrimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Mahaprasadam ki jai, Nrsimhadeva Bhagwan ki jai, Gaura Bhaktarinda ki jai.